be a little bit more prepared in the beginning, understand true costs of what it will take. I had the fortunate of having a little bit of a savings plus retirement income, but plan out I can do this. I have 6 months to start making some revenue. And what is my minimum revenue point?
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of the Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where we help startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. If you ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, and we're always here to help. Now, today we have another great guest on the podcast, Michael Crandall. And Michael is a quick introduction. So graduated from high school, went to college, no shocker there, got a political science degree. Was going to be a lawyer and then changed courses and ended up signing up for the military. Was, I think, in the military for a period of time. Every 4 years would re-up and re-enlist. Was there for about 20 years and retired from the military. Got a job as with the business did a lot of big government contract work, and then decided to start his own business from there and has been expanding ever since. So with that much as a introduction, welcome on the podcast, Michael.
Thank you, Devin. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I just took a much longer journey and condensed it into 30 seconds. So maybe we'll unpack that a bit. So with that, tell us a little bit of how your journey got started in high school and college, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I in high school, always wanted to be a lawyer, and went off to poli-sci. And after 4 years of college, realized I was burnout on schooling. So decided, hey, I'm going to join the military and see the world, do that for a few years. And they offered me some education into the computers and IT and cyber before it was really called cyber. And that piqued my interest. And they sent me to Europe. So I was enjoying Europe. And every 4 years, they teased me with another assignment in Europe and more training. So then 20 years later, whoops, didn't make it to law school. I've retired from the military. I went to work for a large government contracting company.
Now, one question, just because you had a best of intentions. We're going to go into be an attorney. Yeah. Well, maybe that was a good thing you didn't, but who knows? I like attorneys. I know a lot of attorneys don't like law school. But so you did that, and you go into the Army, do that for a period of time. Now, when you got done with I think it was around 20 years or so, was the intent of, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. I'd like to step out and try something different. Was it you couldn't re-up anymore, and that was, you'd hit the limit as to what they would allow you to do, or kind of what prompted that transition from doing the military to going and working on in private or business?
Yeah, after 20 years and multiple deployments, I was kind of broken down physically. So I'm a certified disabled veteran. So yeah, it was just time, couldn't keep up with the PT and the physical standards. So, I made it to the 20 and decided to pull the golden parachute and get out and see what was new on the other side.
Hey, I don't blame you at all. So now you say, okay, I pull the golden handle, the parachute, or whatever that is. I'm going to retire, or at least retire out of the military, maybe not retire in the sense of no longer working. And so you're coming out of the military, and how did you decide kind of what was next? So it was just, hey, I had a buddy and I had a giant job lined up, or hey, I knew this is the area I wanted to go in, and government contracts is great, or this is the only thing that's going to pay me any money now. So what was kind of that transition, or how did you figure out what you're going to do as you left the military?
Yeah, it basically boiled down to I had 90 days of terminal leave. That's like vacation time that I'd stored up. So I had 90 days off after I retired. And I took the first 30 and thought, I'm just going to relax and do nothing. And then everyone said, coming out of the military with a clearance, you get a job, no worries. Well, I get into my second 30 days and I'm putting out my applications and resume and thinking like, well, any minute now. Into month 3, I started to get nervous about what would be next. And then the job offers started to come in, and it was government contracting, people I had met or knew from when I was in the military, looking in their commercial jobs, who they were previous military. So I kind of just stepped into it from there because it was what I knew.
Hmm.
And
So, and I think that makes sense. A lot of times you're saying, I'm gonna, first of all, I need to make an income, need to make money, and what becomes available, that's reasonable within what I'd like to do and what I need to get paid. You take that, and so you're saying, okay, this is something I'm familiar with, I'm comfortable with. It's a good job, and you go from there. And you say, or how long did you stay with you're doing the government contract work?
well, I initially thought I got the job and I was happy. And, being a military guy and doing 20 years with one company, the military, I thought, well, I found my company. Let me work my way up and I'll stay with them. And I started as a technical writer and worked my way up to director of operations during a 5-year period. But what also happened was we were bought 3 times. So I was actually hired by 3 different companies, even though I stayed in the same kind of, you know, business structure. The ownership changed. And on the 3rd purchase, I had kind of promoted myself into a position that they duplicated and didn't want to bring me on to the new company. They kept who they had. I got paid a severance, and my choice was go looking for a job again or branch out and, put it out there and see what I could do on my own.
So now as you kind of come up with that, or you're looking to say, okay, got those 2 choices, how did you weigh those? Because up until this point in your career, and nothing wrong with it by any means, you've worked for someone else, and you worked for the military and with the government, and then you work for a big business, and now you're saying it. What was the tipping point of saying, hey, I'd rather go try something out on my own, do something else, versus trying to go find another job?
Yeah, I found that when I was working, to me, newly out of the military, the civilian world, this brand new civilian world, I would go out to DC, their headquarters, and I'd be the first one in at 7:30, and I'd be the last one out about 7 o'clock at night. And I just looked around and realized people weren't putting in that level of effort. And I thought, well, if I'm going to continue working the way I've kind of just been brought up to work, I might as well do that for myself. And while in the beginning, the pay won't be the same because I'm starting out without any, I knew that I had my military benefits to kind of fall back on. And I think in America, one of the biggest concerns people have is healthcare. I had healthcare covered. So with healthcare covered and enough to cover the mortgage, I thought, well, if I'm going to do it, now's the time to do it. And that's what I did. I jumped out. And
No, I mean, and I think that's a bit of a great place to be, right? In other words, you're not, you have some of the benefits, you're able to a level support yourself, and then otherwise have a bit of that, safety net in a good way. And so you're saying, okay, now with that as an ability to go forth, why not, rather than simply going and working, the extra hours and the nights and weekends and those type of things, why not put that time and effort into building, doing it for yourself and building something out? So makes perfect sense, at least to me. Now, as you're doing that, as you're starting out, how did it go? Was it just a rocket ship to the top, and just everybody, people are banging down your doors to get business and to pay you money, or was it, hey, it was a long ramp up and it took a while to figure out where the business was gonna be, or kind of how was that to transition as you're doing your own thing?
we were lucky. It wasn't a meteoric rise to the top. I would say it was a nice bump and steady climb. We started out in federal contracts because that's kind of what I knew. So I was chasing federal contracts. And within 6 months, we got a fairly large federal contract with 4 employees working overseas. So that kept the lights on. Now we were an actual business, had revenue, could hang a shingle, know what was going on. And then that grew into 2 contracts. And then we kind of pivoted and decided we wanted to start chasing commercial work. So we started chasing small to medium-sized business work, and that's been slowly growing. So yeah, we've been doing this now for 5 years. So I would say the federal contracts we got in the early days and then subsequently have helped us keep the lights on, allow us to show a nice steady income. And then our commercial work has been projects and other growth, kind of incremental.
Hey, well, that's a good thing to be able to keep the lights on, but you have a paycheck and be able to give yourself or self, give yourself and other employees a time to expand and grow the business is a great direction to be, and makes it doable and making a sustainable business. So now we kind of fast forward a bit to where you're at today, and so you take, and this is for the audience. How long have you been doing your own business now?
We started in November 2015, so we're coming up on 6 years.
So coming up on 6 years, and now kind of saying, okay, we've got continue to build a business, you grow it a bit, get in there, continue to sustain things. Now looking a bit at the next 6 to 12 months, so projecting a little bit out into the future, where do you see things headed? Is it kind of just a continual steady growth? Is it a pivot? Is it an adjustment? Unknown or too hard to tell? Or kind of where do you see the next 6 to 12 months going for you?
Well, we actually just opened an office in London, Ontario. Canadian government asked us to open a subsidiary. So we're also Digital Beachhead Canada now. And we've opened an office there. And the goal is to grow in the life sciences and manufacturing up there. They have a lot of manufacturing and life science kind of requirements for cyber. And so that was kind of, they asked us to come up to help fill that gap, which we were fortunate enough to be asked. So our pivot focus is now north of the border and seeing what we can do for Canadian expansion.
Well, that's awesome. That's definitely exciting to be able to expand into additional countries, expand the footprint, and otherwise continue to grow and be successful. So it sounds like a great direction to head. Well, now as we've kind of caught up a bit to where your journey is today, and even or where your journey is taking you today, and even looking a bit to the future, I always love to ask 2 questions at the end of each journey. So we'll jump to those now. So the first question I always ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made, and what did you learn from it?
Not being prepared for the finances at the startup. We assumed looking online that a small business loan through the SBA is something that you just go to the SBA and say, hi, I'm starting a new business, give me my money.
That would be an awesome, just, hey, I got an idea for a business, I need $10 million, what do you think? Oh, sure.
What do you think?
Let's open the bank.
And we found out being a cyber company, every bank told us, and that's what we didn't realize, is the SBA loans are through banks, not through the SBA directly. They just help back them. So you have to have some sort of collateral, and you can't put up your homes. You can't put up personal collateral. And our business consisted of a phone and a laptop at that time. There was, they literally said if we were a construction company, we would have had assets that they would have loaned us money that they knew they would have gotten back. Loaning us money on we're going to get customers one day, it just didn't fly. And so what we learned was there are organizations out there that understand the federal government business and can give you loans against contracts, so that they knew, but we ended up funding ourselves. We found this out down the line, and there are agencies that will say, you have a federal contract, it's worth this much. We'll front 3 months salary for your employees because that's what you need to cover. So we, if we'd done a little bit more like business research other than, okay, we have a name, let's go sell it.
Hey, it could have been a whole different story. But on the other hand, maybe the inexperience or not unknowing that was a benefit, in the sense now you had to figure out how to bootstrap it, how to do these things, and you weren't able to simply go and rely on the government, so to speak, or the SBA, not necessarily the government, but getting a loan, but rather you had to figure it out. Now you can maintain that. It forces you to figure out the ways to make it profitable and possible without relying on debt. So I think that it sounds like it was a great experience. Even if you've done a little bit more research on the front end, it might have helped to accelerate or otherwise taken you in a different direction.
Failure is always an opportunity. So
exactly.
When we failed to get the money up front, we found other opportunity, and that drove us.
Absolutely. So now, second question I'll ask is, if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what'd be the one piece of advice you'd give them?
Be a little bit more prepared in the beginning. Understand true costs of what it will take. I had the fortunate of having a little bit of a savings plus retirement income, but plan out I can do this. I have 6 months to start making some revenue. And what is my minimum revenue point? There's always what I call the crap or get off the pot point, to where if you're doing a current job and you're trying to build a new organization, one is taking too much of your time, but the new organization probably isn't paying you what you've been making or what you're used to. At some point, you got to know when to pull the trigger and just trust your gut and go for it.
No, I think and I think, it's interesting, the trusting your gut, and, sometimes you say, oh, my gut's always wrong. But, a lot of times if you were to do that, almost what you said, do that little bit of homework and taking, some of those takeaways and do a little bit of research, or be able to have an educated gut, and then they're just simply pulling the trigger, because you can also get the analysis paralysis where, you're always trying to get more research, you're always trying to get more information, you're always trying to do it, and you go to such an extreme that you want to de-risk it such that you never have to trust your gut because you know all the answers, you're never going to get started. So I think that there is that takeaway of kind of finding that balance.
And we say that in cybersecurity. There is no cybersecurity. There's only risk management. And it's the same with a business. You're never going to be 100% because you never know what's around the corner. I mean, we just had COVID, right? No one knows what's going to happen. So you do your risk management and say, where can we accept risk and what risk am I willing to mitigate, et cetera. And then you just have to go.
No, and I think that's definitely a great takeaway, because it's a lot of the same thing that we, as an attorneys, everybody wants to say, well, is there any way that I can make sure or guarantee I don't get sued? And it's like, well, you can do things to reduce that likelihood and best prepare for it, but anybody can file a lawsuit, and it doesn't matter if it's legitimate or not, you get to still deal with it, and that's part of the legal system. And so it's more about that risk mitigation. How do I anticipate what are my biggest risks, what are my best likelihoods, and how do I avoid or adjust to or reduce those risks as best I can, and otherwise prepare for it. And then you just have to go under, we don't have perfect knowledge, and we're not going to be able to perfectly be able to address those, and we're going to do the best we can.
So as an attorney, you don't give guaranteed wins?
If I could give guaranteed and I could actually meet the guarantee, I would be one in a million attorneys. There may be some attorneys that guarantee wins, and those are the ones you want to run from, because they can't guarantee it, and they're just lying to you to try and get your money.
Yep.
So as we now wrap up the podcast, and people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above. What's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
You can reach out to us at our website, digitalbeachhead.com, or on email, info@digitalbeachhead.com.
Awesome. Well, I definitely encourage everybody to reach out, connect, and otherwise make a new best friend, if nothing else. Now, with that, thank you again for coming on the podcast, Michael. Now, for all of you that are listeners, if you have your own journey to tell and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, we'd love to have you. Just go to inventiveguest.com and apply to be on the show. A couple more things, make sure to like, subscribe, and otherwise leave us a review, because we want to make sure that everybody finds out about all these awesome episodes. And last but not least, you ever need help with patents, trademarks, or anything else to do business, just go to strategymeeting.com. We're always here to help. Thank you again, Michael, for coming on the podcast, and I wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thank you.